We're in the midst of a huge transformation where our peers, communities, and workplaces are all really melding into one. Welcome to Reimagining Company Culture. My name is Christina Giordano, and I am a partnerships manager here at AllVoices, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers. Today, I'm excited to welcome our next guest onto the interview series, Susan Justus. She is a VP of Talent Development at Betterment. Susan, how's your day going?
Going well. Just trying to remain cool in this humidity in New York City.
Oh my gosh, I am also in New York and I stepped outside and I was just like, I'm gonna come right back.
Right.
Inside, I'm excited to speak with you this afternoon. If you wanted to start off by telling our listeners a little bit about yourself, including your pronouns, your role at Betterment. And I also have to ask, I know this was a little bit ago, but how's your trip to Kenya?
Absolutely. Well, hello, everyone. My name is Susan Justus. As Christina mentioned, my pronouns are she, her, and hers. I work for Betterment. I lead the talent development function. For those of you who do not know Betterment, we provide smart management solutions in the investing and banking space. Some of our offerings include human advice, checking, savings, retirement planning, etc. Within my role, I'm responsible for professional skill development and diversity, equity, and inclusion education across all facets of each employee's journey. I think about how we develop our people and create learning solutions to help them grow and ensure they're linked into the firm's overall strategy and needs of our people. Prior to Betterment, I've been doing this work for almost 20 years now. It feels like forever, but different industries I've worked for are business consulting, insurance, banking, but I've consistently thrived through in talent development just throughout my journey.
Incredible. And how was your trip?
My trip was amazing. So I went for 2 weeks. Kenya is where I'm originally from. I didn't mention I'm based in New York City, but I was born in Kenya. Went home to celebrate my grandmother, who unfortunately passed away a year ago. And so we had a celebration of life for her. So it was a beautiful and fulfilling trip. Thank you for asking.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sorry for your loss, but I'm really excited that you got to celebrate her life. I think it's a beautiful thing. And you also mentioned in your kind of introduction as well, you have, almost 20 years of experience in the space. What has really inspired you to join the talent development and lead the team there at Betterment?
Well, I love what I do because I have the opportunity to align the goals of the organization to creating high performance cultures, and high performance cultures comes with talent growth, right? So it's been really fun to work at Betterment specifically because I've had the opportunity to build the function from the ground up. A lot of the roles that I've worked in have always either been in one avenue of talent development, whether it be onboarding or leadership development. But at Betterment and my last couple other jobs, I also had the opportunity to really look at the full scope of the strategy and align our function to the business, and really thinking about how we can continue to evolve our employee population and really create impactful employee experiences.
Mm-hmm. Incredible. Well, employee experience is definitely a hot topic right now. There are so many conversations around what company culture really looks like in a remote first, hybrid, or back in the office setting. And we know that company culture are not happy hours and ping pong tables. It's how you make people feel and you empower your team. But I also wanted to ask you, kind of in your role, how do you define company culture? What is it?
I would define company culture as a set of shared values, social behaviors, norms, goals, and practices that really characterize an organization, and really tell your story for those who you're looking to recruit, as well as those who are thriving internally.
Yeah, I love that definition. I think values, the rooted in values in a shared mission is really important. So specifically at Betterment, can you tell us a little bit more about what differentiates your company culture there, and what the employees stand for there?
Absolutely. So Betterment's very mission driven. We have one singular objective, and that's to help people make the most of their money so that they can live better.
Love that.
Since our start in 2010, we have developed a range of products and services, which I did mention earlier, in pursuit of this objective, and we're continuously on that journey. When I think about the other areas of culture differentiators, we're very focused on community building. People are very intentional about building relationships beyond the task, which is actually one of our core values. So how do you get to know your people? How are you authentic about those relationships and really understanding what's important to the people that work for you or you work with?
Mhm.
Authenticity is another area that's huge for us. So really ensuring that people can bring their full selves to work. Like, who are you as a whole versus who are you as an employee in the work that you do? And then innovation and creativity are huge, of course, because we're constantly creating products for our people and for the industry overall. And so ideation is a constant area that we thrive in to ensure that we're meeting the mark in this industry.
Mhm. I like the value in the phrase that you mentioned in terms of relationships beyond the task, authenticity. One of the topics that we discussed in our kind of pre-call, as well as around mindful leadership. I think leaders have an incredible role in shaping company culture and again empowering their teams as well. Can you tell us about how you think about mindful leadership in practice and really psychological safety at work too, which is a topic people are discussing as well of how to cultivate?
Sure. Well, the way I think of it is more of creating a people first culture.
Mhm.
You need to actually care about your employees, as I talked about a little earlier,
Yeah.
truly caring about your individuals on your teams, the people that you work with. To truly care about your people, you really need to understand who they uniquely are. So taking the time to build upon that. And some of those ways, as you mentioned earlier, is aligning employee experiences to demonstrate that, assessing your touch points as a people team, and identifying those friction points. I think it's huge to take a step back to review that and iterating in those areas to ensure that you're boosting morale across the organization. Another area that I would speak to in terms of creating a people first culture that touches on mindfulness, of course, as you lead others, is listening to your employees, providing several different ways for them to submit and share feedback. Like really having that two-way conversation is huge. Um, it's really important to be transparent and open so that they know that you're hearing, they have a voice and they're seen and they're heard. So creating various avenues of continuous feedback can include annual engagement surveys to biannual upward feedback surveys. So employees are actually providing feedback to their managers so their managers can be most effective and increasing their mindfulness and leadership. Biannual career development discussions, and that leans more towards getting at the core and getting to know your people and what matters to them on a career perspective, what makes them thrive, what keeps them motivated, what are they most curious about at this stage of their journey, how can you keep them excited about working for you and working for the organization overall. Leadership AMAs, hearing from our leaders and really giving them the space to answer questions and demonstrating the act of transparency, huge. And the last thing I'll say is just having intentional weekly one-on-one touch points with your team members, and let it not just be about the work you're doing, let it also be about how they're doing, right? So getting at the core of who they are and understanding what's happening with them today. What do they need in terms of support from you as a leader?
Yeah, absolutely. Being mindful also means that you understand and are mindful that they are a full person inside of work, outside of work, and taking
Absolutely.
time, being intentional. And what I hear you say too in terms of people first is listening to the voice of the people as well. And that's always changing.
Absolutely.
So you should always iterate and ask for continuous feedback, because I think something that we really value is just because you're not getting any feedback does not mean that everything is perfect and well. You have to ask for it. And I know over the past couple of months, and I'm sure in the future as well, people are going to struggle with this huge burnout in terms of work and then everything going on in their kind of lives in general as well. How do you think organizations and specifically managers too, like we talked about, can intentionally prevent burnout and really get ahead of it as well to ensure that their folks are taken care of?
Well, I think interestingly, when we first heard about burnout, people thought it was like a one size fits all, but burnout is very unique to each person. It is very unique to each person. We all have, there's different aspects when you think about burnout, whether it be 1,000 Zoom meetings per day to loneliness and just being at home by yourself and being isolated to having a family at home and trying to balance the work-life balance around that. And that's just that we've all experienced it in different ways. And so it's important that managers customize to the individual and what that person may need. And that's by asking the question and not assuming what they need. But some of the ways that we are actually focused on supporting those who are experiencing that, or even just to prevent it overall, is we have summer Fridays. So we encourage folks to turn off at 1:30 on every Friday until Labor Day. We have unlimited time off. That's encouraged just in general for people to really be taking the time they need when they need it. Mental health days, we encourage once a month. So we actually use the acronym MHD, that people are asked to take one of those per day. And then teams are on a function level. Teams and leaders are allowed to identify no meeting afternoons, no meeting Fridays or Mondays, whatever makes sense for that specific function, because that can be a broad solution for all, like not one size fits all. So we do encourage that as well.
Yeah, I love no meeting. When we used to do winning Wednesdays, or there was no meetings from like 9 to noon as well. And it just makes a huge difference when nobody is slacking or pinging you and you just have heads down.
Mm-hmm.
And you're protecting your time because you can never make more of that resource as well. So setting healthy boundaries is super important. And again, like going back to that theme of managers and leaders can really help you demonstrate what that looks like in practice. Modeling is really important. How have you seen just the role of leaders and managers change over the past year? I know we kind of touched on it briefly, but I don't think we can overemphasize, people managers need to know like what's going on.
Sure. So there's three key areas that I feel have shifted. One is inclusivity. So leading in via inclusion, the avenue of inclusion. Safety and trust is another area, and connectivity. So let me dig into each one of those. The inclusivity part is more so how can you be inclusive on how you make decisions, how you treat the people on your team. Creating an even playing field across all team members to ensure they all feel equally valued is something to be really intentional about and to pay attention to. That's one area I would really emphasize on how leaders need to be thinking about their teams, whether it's in person, whether it's virtually, whatever it may be, finding inclusive practices so that everyone feels included.
Yeah.
Safety and trust, safety meaning leaning towards that psychological safety. I'm sure that's a word, those words you've heard multiple times, especially now. And building trust across your team is really important. So creating space that allows for vulnerability, authenticity, and that really starts with the manager demonstrating that behavior. So how can you create like an opportunity to bring that authenticity and vulnerability to the conversation with your team members? How can you be transparent and really show up for your team so that they can model that same behavior in return? Because now you're really showing the action, so it really allows for them to do the same. And then connectivity is leaning towards just being intentional about getting to know your team members outside of the work, which I've spoken a little bit about already. So one of the things I do on my team specifically, every week when we meet, the first thing on the agenda is, what are you grateful for? What are you proud of? Yeah, right? What are you grateful for? What are you proud of? Like recently we hit July. So I was like, what is one thing you want to achieve by the end of the year? We've hit the halfway point. So I give them space to really share forward with me and with everyone else, because you get to know the person at the core of who they are versus just about the task at hand. So I encourage that authenticity, whether it be one-on-one or within your team members.
Yeah, in terms of the three pillars that you mentioned, it goes back to being mindful and intentional. Those three things don't just happen because you have the best intentions, but don't really act on it or have a plan to, demonstrate that as well. I feel like I have to ask you the question of, what are you grateful for right now?
Oh, I love that. What am I grateful for? I'm actually grateful for some normalcy. Like I feel like this summer there's a bit more normalcy than what last year was. Last year was a rough year for many of us, and so I'm just glad I'm able to see my friends, my family, and give a hug when I can't. Like I feel allowed to hug people again, and I appreciate and value that.
Yeah, that's a great answer. I also love a good hug, and you can tell who's really good at giving hugs, and probably was just like missing that over this past year as well, and gathering with friends and family, just people in your life in general. Um,
Yeah.
Another question that I had is kind of what resources are key for organizations or companies to really provide for their employees to ensure that the employee experience, like you mentioned earlier, it's not one size fits all, it's individualized and you're engaging employees. I know you talked about employee listening, but are there any other resources that they should offer employees or just in terms of strategy there?
Sure. So we offer professional development allowance. I encourage all organizations to have that because that is individualized. Sometimes what you're offering internal isn't quite the solution that's needed. So allocating some type of cost that each person can use per year towards some either a technical skill, hard skill, or something that will really help them level up within their role. And of course, with the guidance of their manager and helping them identify what those areas are. One-on-one coaching, I am a huge fan of. I'm a coach myself. That's also very individualized. So helping remove roadblocks, helping people really think about the future, how to get from one step to the next. So we actually have a coaching program at Betterment that I designed and I also am part of. And it really makes a difference for managers or even people, individual contributors who are just trying to like figure out what that next step is. Or if you're a new employee, how to be successful within your role. There's so many various topics that come in hand that really support our employees in that way. The other area that I would touch on a learning perspective is creating opt-in micro-learning offerings so that people have opportunities to take shorter educational courses that are not long and drawn out if they prefer to, or even just live webinar sessions if that's what they prefer as well, because that also drives that connectivity and building relationships, which is part of our core values, that touch on soft skills that are really relevant to today and what would make people successful today. Some of those topics include EQ, emotional intelligence, adaptability, which I mean, huge right now, right? How can we adapt and be effective in this new way of work? Creativity, collaboration, and virtual presentation, I think, is huge too, because we've all been forced to have to learn how to present virtually, right? So really providing soft skills and even hard skills, if you can, based on your budget, that really support people to be successful during this time.
Yeah, I love that. It sounds like there are a bunch of different opportunities to be involved and better like one's individual professional development as well. Again, really customizing that to the employee and the skills and the function job that they are in. I wanted to kind of go back to the coaching program that you mentioned that you helped develop at Betterment for folks who aren't aware or don't have like coaching at their company or have like a mentorship program. Can you talk about is coaching like something under like mentorship or is it similar or what are your thoughts on that?
So I separate those two. Coaching is more so focused on future oriented solutions. And I mean, specifically guided to removing roadblocks, to really taking what does that next step need to be and exploring what that is and being empowered to figure out what those solutions are. Coaches are not meant to give answers. They're meant to help guide you to the answer. Mentorship is more career driven. So like getting guidance and advice on how to be successful, whether it be a current role or a future oriented role.
Got it. That makes sense. I love that. I feel like that's something I'll bring up at our company as well, because I think that's a really important resource too. I guess going to kind of macro trends, so not necessarily at Betterment or previous companies, but what are you seeing in the market today that companies and individuals really need to hone in on, include in their strategy to be successful in the future, especially as a lot of folks are looking to move roles, they're looking for flexibility, and they're just looking at the employer brand of a lot of different companies.
Sure. Internal mobility is huge. So really identifying talent internally and building out pipelines um, of underrepresented groups. Like, I mean, why not invest in someone who understands the landscape of your organization, right? And trust that they will learn the new skills necessary. So building out, whether it be apprenticeship programs, whether it be providing them opportunities internal, like encouraging the recruiting team to post internal opportunities first and targeting certain teams that could be great candidates and could be part of that pipeline, I think is a huge trend that has really shown up even more today than ever before. We're currently doing that ourselves at Betterment, and we found it very successful, especially for those who are like, whether you're a customer experience employee and you're trying to figure out what that next step is. We've had apprenticeship programs of people who have gone from customer experience to engineering, and they're thriving, and I mean, thriving and doing amazing. We've had people go from customer experience to operations and exploring that avenue for a career path. So give your people a chance. I mean, you just never know like how you can really help them find that next opportunity that could be their career journey.
Yeah. Give your people a chance. I love that. And I think that goes to professional development as well, and support by your leaders and your managers. And I think going from something like customer experience to engineering, it's just a big testament to hiring for potential. There are learned skills. And if someone is, again, behind the mission of Betterment and they want to stay at the company, just really supporting them to their career goals, I think that's really important. A personal question that I have for you is, in your, almost 20 years of experience, I'm sure you've had many of these, both big wins and small wins, but what is your kind of top of mind proudest achievement?
Well, I would say having the opportunity to build the talent development function from the ground up at Betterment. I've been at Betterment, it'll be 5 years in November. Can't believe it. But it's been such an incredible opportunity to have the space to create, innovate, and collaborate with HR and business leaders to develop a strategy, honestly, that supports and builds our talent across the organization. And it's been so much fun. I've had various roles previously, as I mentioned earlier, that have allowed me to work in different avenues of talent development. And then I've also taken on roles that I've gotten to take on someone else's function, but to come to an organization where I get to build it from the ground up has been extremely rewarding for me. So I would say that's my biggest achievement.
Susan, thank you so much for being on Reimagining Company Culture. It was so great to speak with you again and just to share your experience and insights about the employee experience and the future of work.
Thank you. And if anyone wants to reach out to me, I'm on LinkedIn. Just find me. Happy to chat.
Amazing. And we will link that information in the show notes here. And as a reminder for folks who are listening, AllVoices believes in the empowerment of everyone to speak up, and we think it's a requirement for the organization to succeed as a whole. And everyone have a good rest of your afternoon.